Hey, so thank you, Suzzie, for coming and doing this. It's great to have you here and chatting to us. Could we just start by telling us who you are and a little bit about Papagena as a group?
Yeah, so my name's Suzzie Vango, and I am a founder, member, and director of Papagena, which is an all-female a cappella um, women's group specialising in sort of classical style of singing. So we like to think we're quite unique in the sound world of a cappella groups. And yeah, I've founded the group with Sarah Tennant Flowers about 10 years ago now. And I think we've gone through various formations. And I think from 2015, we really started to take it a bit seriously. So yeah, so that's me. And I sing soprano with the group.
And you're five voices, is that correct?
Yeah, there are five of us. Yeah, five. We've got three sopranos and two altos. Well, a mezzo and then a proper alto, so a kind of bass singer in the group.
So one of the things I know lots of you well, which is lovely, and I know your voices. And what's one of the things I notice with you all is whilst you have some people that have very specific roles which they'll sing, quite a lot of you will sort of switch between, or you're quite flexible about how you voice yourselves when you work as a group.
Yeah, so we do have all sopranos can sort of reach the higher echelons, but there's definitely one of us that's more happy to sit up there for ages, and that's fine. And then the altos, I mean, I'm a kind of in the middle anchor person, so I sort of rove between parts depending on what's required, depending on what kind of music we're doing. But I have been known to have to sing bottom Fs um, as in a piece, but then in the next piece have to be floating top A's, or absolutely pummeling out some top A's and top G's. So the flexibility is really important for the singers, and I think that's one of the things that we've worked on over the years is finding the right match of people that can provide that flexible sound, and actually having a sort of an operatic sound when required, but then a very very clean poppy folky blended sound as well.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. So for people that don't know Papagena, you guys sing quite a range of repertoire in your normal everyday concert. You'll cover, well, talk a little bit about the kind of music that you might cover in a Papagena concert.
I mean, one of our programs is called Nuns and Roses, and although that's all very ha 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 funny that you've been play on the words of Guns and Roses, actually, we do have some Hildegard of Bingen, who's a ninth century nun, and we do have an arrangement of Sweet Child of Mine by Guns and Roses. So it's and then in the middle we've got sort of Jewish Sephardic music. We've got we love music from around the world. Like one of the things that we've done, and one of the reasons that we actually started the group was because there really wasn't a huge amount of repertoire written for women's voices. There's a lot of rep, we all know this, there's loads of rep written for children's choirs and young people's voices, and there's some amazing stuff out there, but if you start singing it as an adult, it doesn't quite work. The sound world isn't quite right, and a lot of it's with piano, and a lot of the a cappella stuff that we found was not really exciting or as interesting as we hoped it would be. And but then we found that around the world there's this amazing culture of folk music and sort of world music that people have been writing and arranging, and that's one of the things we've become sort of quite passionate about. And then within the same concert we'll be slotting in a bit of Tchaikovsky, and a little bit of Guns N' Roses, or what's the one we did recently, Sandy Denny, Fairport Convention. So it's a real eclectic mix, but I think that's what audiences particularly enjoy. But it's not just a matter of just putting a load of lovely stuff in a concert that we like singing. We really do think quite hard about the journey that the audience goes on, and intertwining the pieces in a thematic way that actually makes sense.
I'm going to go to that, I think, a little bit later, but just this sort of like place that you've got to 10 years ago when you and Sarah first went, shall we put together a group? I mean, how that conversation went together is, did you know that there was a sound that you wanted as a group, or was that something that as Papagena you sort of created early on in the process?
I think it's evolved over time. Obviously, everybody's different, everybody's voices are different, and everybody's personalities are different. And when we choose a piece of music, for example, oh well, Lizzie would sing that really beautifully as a solo, or that particular line would really suit her voice. So the rest of us will work around that. And then I suppose that, sorry, my internet connection's unstable then. Just checking you can still hear me. Yeah. And I suppose we really think about the individual voices, but then we have to work together as a group to create that the sound of Papagena. So one of the things we've become quite well known for is like quite a distinctive sound. And you know, we often, when we get played on the radio, we get messages from people going, I've just heard you on the radio, but I've not heard that piece before, but it definitely sounded like Papagena. And that's quite exciting to have been able to create our own sound, and it's something we work on in rehearsals, but being basically respectful to the fact that there's 5 women with 5 very different voices that can all sing together and listen to each other and work together to create one big sound, but then also just allow the individual sounds to come through, those solo lines. And we do spend quite a lot of time, I think, on that, giving those soloists the opportunity to do their bit with us sort of backing away, or if it's me, you know, and everybody else backs away. But yeah, and when we choose a piece, we definitely decide, particularly with the sopranos, who's going to be singing which of those top 3 lines. And sometimes we ditch a singer, you know, if it's in 4 parts. Sometimes it needs 2 sopranos on that top line, and sometimes that soprano just needs a rest, just because it doesn't fit the texture to have too many voices.
I realise this could be quite a difficult question with it, but I'm really intrigued by that concept of finding a sound and working on finding a sound. What kind of process does that look like in a rehearsal room? So I suppose it's 2 parts of it. Is one saying early on in the process when you were really discovering like what that sound was, what were your focuses, and now where you know that that's the sound that's accessible to you, how do you sort of remind yourselves or click yourselves back into the Papagena sound when all of you work as individual soloists and out in the world separately?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer, but I'll do my best. I suppose we are all striving for the same goal, is to create something that feels musical. And I suppose in the early days we were sort of worrying about getting the notes right and just coming in at the same time of each other. And of course, over time, you build that kind of trust in each other that when you breathe and go to sing, that person's going to sing, and of course that immediately frees up the voice, and so you do start to develop that kind of natural sound. There's nothing worse, is there, than you go to breathe and you don't trust that the person next to you is going to come in, and you have that stifled and then you have that sort of tension. So over time that's obviously disappeared because we've built this sort of connection between each other. We rehearse separate parts. We find parts that go together, we find parts that don't go together. We've just done this piece by John Duggan, which has lots and lots of quite challenging style changes. So some of it's very, very active, lots and lots of vocal acrobatics, and then some of it's loads of really intricate cluster chords. And of course the tuning for those is really important, and we spend quite a lot of time on the vowel sounds. I'm sure that you guys will have talked about this a lot. You know, you can't just sing ah for everything. Sometimes one part's got to go ah and just have a slightly more edgy ah vowel, just so that clash works a bit better, or the tuning's a bit more accurate. So you know, I think it's modifying vowels, modifying sounds, and through that process of breaking down the parts and going, right, let's hear these 2 parts together, let's hear these 2 parts together, let's add that part, okay, change that vowel, yeah, that's the right sound. And we all listen to each other, and someone will step back and listen and then add their part. And so it's quite a enjoyable but quite a long process, but you have to be quite committed to it. So I suppose people think it's all about learning the notes and getting the notes right, but actually, you know, you can have so much fun and create such a lovely colour. I think if you talk about colours of sounds, that's something that if you start thinking about chords as sort of colours, and when you want something bright, you know, what kind of colour does that feel to you? When you want something dark, so you can sing the same chord, can't you, with a different vowel and completely transform the sound of it. And I think having five of us who've got very different backgrounds, so 2 opera singers, a choral director, like quite a prolific choral director, and then, you know, 2 consort singers who've sung for most of the London groups. Between us, as in addition to all the other stuff we do, there's so many exciting things. You've got, you know, drama, someone going, oh, hang on a minute, this piece is about this, so why are we singing it all pretty and la la la? It needs to be like, poof, you know, it's quite a sort of dramatic piece. So even just coming at it from an angle of like, what's this about? Like, really, what's this piece about? And we might have arguments about it, like not proper arguments, but, you know, someone might disagree. I remember we were doing Sigh No More Ladies by the Shakespeare text. It's by Jetse Bremer, and we were singing it, and we was like, sigh no more ladies, and it had all this like whoa in the alto line, and then Abby just went, this is really sassy, this piece. This is all like, hey ladies, stop getting all upset with your men, and just, you know, they are losers and you are the best. And we were like, oh yeah, that's completely, and we sang it straight away with that in mind, and I can't tell you the difference in the performance. So even just collectively having a different mental approach to what the words are about can make such a huge difference.
I love that. No, I love that, and I love I find it very interesting that how that you're able to have such an eclectic approach, depending on what comes into, I suppose, the discussion, what comes into that piece, and needing to go through. And between the 5 of you as a dynamic of people, I know you're all very close, I know you get along very well. Do you ever find that that someone has to take control, or do you feel that you sort of pass it around, or is there naturally someone in the group that tends to sort of like, you know, lead you through rehearsing a new piece?
I would say that naturally Sarah and I are leaders. That's sort of our day job anyway. We both conduct choirs and run ensembles and things, and so we will probably be the most to butt heads with each other, but it's not really like that. I mean, we're very respectful of each, we have very similar ideas, but when we do disagree, we don't just go, well, I don't agree with you. We have such a lot of respect for each other that, you know, I suppose if you state your case as to the way that something should be done, then, you know, the other person generally will go, actually, no, I am with you on that. And it's incredibly rare that we disagree on something. And if we have done, it's not the end of the world. You just go, okay, well, that's fine. And one of you just concedes. I mean, but the others, they'll have some strong views as well. I love it when the other 3 have strong views, because they're really passionate about it. I think that's so important. They suddenly go, no, hang on a minute, I really feel strongly that this is how this piece should go. And because it's so unusual, you go, ooh, yeah, okay, let's really break that down. It's a very respectful environment, and I think you've just got to acknowledge that everybody's entitled to their opinions, and everybody's opinion should be listened to, and your opinion is allowed to change. I think if we all went into the group with this kind of, I'm right and my opinion is always going to be right, then we'd never get anywhere. The whole group would fall apart. It's got to be collaborative, and it is, and that's one of the great things about the group. I've learned so much as a singer and as a musician, just generally being in that group.